Welcome back to Market Call Recap on the Early Buffett YouTube channel. If it's your first time here, I do a daily recap of BNN Bloomberg's top picks, take a look at the charts, show you what I'm seeing. Please see the disclaimer in the description. As I always mention, I'm not a financial advisor. I am just a guy looking at charts, and this is not financial advice, of course. Today, June 11th, we had Gordon Reed on the show, who had AMGN, First Solar, and CrowdStrike as his top picks for today. First and foremost, I'd like to take a look at Apple, because I know Gordon does usually like Apple. I didn't get through the whole episode, but I have no doubt that it was probably talked about. And you could see right here that, this, I call it 195, but really it was really that $200 per share level that it's been, Apple's been trying to break through for quite some time now. And it finally did it today. We're up 6.2% on the day. $205.10 right there on the ticker. Pretty impressive stuff. I do hold Apple. I trimmed a bit because it was getting to be a little bit too big of a part of my portfolio. Been holding it for quite some time. So took some profits. No one ever went broke taking profits, as they say. But yeah, it's looking strong. We finally broke out of this trading range here of the 165, 166, and 200 that we've been bouncing around since last July, actually. So good news for Apple. They had a lot of AI announcements yesterday, Apple Intelligence announcements, and AI pumps the stocks, right? So no doubts there. But back to what Gordon Reed was taking a look at. So he likes AMGN, biotechnology company. So he likes it for the relatively inexpensive PE. Well, I should say inexpensive on a PE basis. Their recent purchase of a company called Horizon Therapeutics. They're in that obesity drug GLP-1 space as well, which everyone's going crazy over these days. So they're pretty well positioned. I'm taking a look at the charts here. It's looking like it's broken past that 290 level. That was resistance back in November 22. And it broke, did a pretty serious breach of that resistance in January. Got a little overheated and then, dropped back down. Settled in April and then had, this gap up right here, which is interesting. I always like looking at these gaps because gaps often get filled. And you could see here on the shorter term, we have this big bounce May 3rd, big move. And now we're seeing, lower highs, I should say, lower lows. So, this is a little bit concerning. Is it going to bounce off that 50-day? Maybe, but I would probably put my money more on it's going to fill this gap. I mean, it's a pretty weak looking pattern here, just technically speaking. All of these pumps are getting kind of sold off here. So I wouldn't be surprised if it settled, somewhere on this $275 level, which was resistance, 285-ish was resistance back in October after it, plowed right through it. But you could, probably see this settling back down at the 200-day given these moves recently. So that's what I'm seeing on here. But over the long term, it's a strong looking stock. Of course, Interactive Brokers going a little crazy here. But over the long term, it's pretty strong. So you like to see these long-term charts here. So probably also a potential dip buy there, because if it, dips anymore, it'll probably continue on that 200-day moving average and continue its orderly ascent. So next up was First Solar. He got in right before this rise here. So I imagine he probably got into the low 200s now, and then it blasted off. But that is a big move right there. We can measure that move. I always like measuring some of these big moves here. So we have like a 4 or 5 day move. 4-day move of 41%, which is, quite impressive. But he sees them as a domestic, they're a domestic producer of these solar panels, which is going to be needed. He relates it again to AI and data centers and all that stuff. So yeah, tax incentives related to the installation of these. So First Solar looking strong. They're, in a good space. And solar panels have come down in price quite a bit, so they should be, adopted by the mainstream soon. I mean, I'd love to get solar panels, but in my part of the world, it just doesn't make sense. So we went over that, call it 220-ish, blasted right through it, and now we're consolidating here a little below 300. So, but that's a big move. I mean, I would steer clear of this one for a while, because in these cases, often they'll meander. Sometimes they'll fade, right? They'll fade back to a moving average, because now you're quite a bit above the moving average right here. So we'll see. I mean, something to keep an eye on. They're in a good space, like I said, and Gordon likes it for various reasons. But nevertheless, they're in a good space. So CrowdStrike, cyber security. So I think this is going to be critical mission critical infrastructure with CrowdStrike. I mean, there's cybersecurity is on everyone's mind these days. It's on my mind as well. And that's a good place to be in. But again, this is another one that, pundits have always seen as kind of expensive, right? People pay up for this type of company. That's where there's a huge amount of expected growth. So he also has found it expensive, but they're a leader, and they provide security services to a lot of the Fortune 500 companies. He expects it to grow into its relatively high valuation. I mean, they're trading at like a PE of like 700 or something like that. So it's a pricey stock on a PE basis, but with the proper weighting, this could be an interesting part of someone's portfolio if you want to get into that space, because they are seen as one of the leaders, right? So they took a half position on CrowdStrike in hopes that it'll grow into the valuation. What I'm seeing on the charts here, I see this gap, which, as I always like to say, gaps tend to get filled. So I wouldn't be surprised if we continue, if we fade, if we kind of stay in this range for a little bit, because it did have a very good run since the beginning of 2023 here. It's a really nice run. We can measure that run if we want. It's a big run, 300% run. So that's pretty impressive. So do I want to be buying it here? I don't know. Some people like to buy at all-time highs, right? And especially a gap up all-time high, but I'm not sure if I would touch it. I'd probably wait for a pullback to one of the moving averages, or it probably will settle in somewhere in this, in this area here. Or it'll keep on going like everything else, right? So who knows? But on that note, let's take a look at the SPY real quick before we sign off. We have the S&P also hovering in those all-time highs right now. Things are looking good, but we're down on the day. We're down 0.2% on the day on the SPY, but that chart is equally impressive. So are we due for a bit of a pullback? Probably. Probably. We probably will pull back to that 50-day, I should say. But who's to know? I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, have a great one.